My name is Victoria Browning, and I'm a student officer here at Edinburgh College. This week, Scotland is hosting the UN Climate Change Conference, or as you may know it, COP26. Gathering in Glasgow will be world leaders, government representatives, and more importantly, us, people who care about the future of our planet. In this programme, we want to discuss what's really important to us here at Edinburgh College and how we can help now and in the future. This is an issue that affects us all, and so we've brought together 4 people who represent various sectors of the college. Here we have Skye Mariner, who is a student at the college and a climate activist. We have John Bouglas, who is the Edinburgh College's Vice Principal for Innovation, Planning and Performance. He's also the chair of the college's Sustainability Education Group, but most importantly, he's a mean guitarist. We have Sam Docherty, who is a lecturer in the Broadcast Media Department. He has vast experience in the wonderful world of television, but more importantly, his first degree was in biology and his second was in ecology. Finally, I'd like to welcome Claire Furness, who's our Sustainability Officer at Edinburgh College Students Association. We also have a 5th guest, and that's our studio audience. They're on hand to ask questions of the panel and to give us their views on why COP26 is an important moment in our lives. So, let's start by asking our 4 panel members why looking after the planet is so important to them. Skye?
For me, it's about people. I do a lot of volunteer wellbeing and stuff like that, and I think it's really important to look after your fellow humans. And unfortunately, the climate crisis mostly affects smaller countries and indigenous cultures, and 9 times out of 10, they're the people who've done the least to, contribute to climate change. So for me, it's about looking after them and supporting them and just making your fellow humans happy.
John, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And also, we're seeing more and more extreme weather events from the climate change. We're seeing, extreme forest burning across the United States. And we're seeing, of course, the melting of the ice caps in the Arctic. This is creating huge amounts of flooding, and we're seeing that more and more in the UK. And in fact, the effect of this will also affect food production and our choices that we see to live in the way that we do at the moment. So I think it's hugely important.
Yeah. Bring it over to yourself, Sam.
Basically, when I left university, I was into marine biology, and in the late 60s, early 70s, we all thought we were Jacques Cousteau. And unfortunately, the sea was the first place where we began to notice these changes. And I suppose the crucial answer to that question is because I'm a grandfather. I've got grandchildren, and I can see the way the environment is shaping up, and it's not in a fit state to be left to my grandchildren.
And Claire, I guess that's a hard one to follow.
Yeah, so I guess for me, I can't think of a defining moment when I realised that it was what interested me so much. So I studied sustainable development, so kind of knew that I was interested in it from that kind of point. But yeah, just the more I learned, the more I realised that I really wanted to be kind of involved with this line of work. So that's why I'm working here on the sustainability project that we're running. And yeah, just wanting to kind of continue to educate myself and others about this, so we hopefully don't get to any catastrophic kind of impacts on the planet and the world.
We next have a question from a member of our studio audience. So we have a question from Ryan Murphy, who is a creative and digital media student.
Hello there. My question is there any way to see how climate change started or can be prevented or stopped in the future?
Yeah. So I guess, Claire, will we take that back to you?
Yeah, we can do. So I've been running some sessions on this recently with students here. So really kind of climate change to the significant level we're seeing it at the moment can really be traced back to the Industrial Revolution. So when humans have started to kind of be using kind of oil and gas, fossil fuels more significantly, and just kind of the production that we use, we are seeing a lot higher levels of greenhouse gases going out into the atmosphere. So really it's kind of a human-induced problem that's kind of just continuing to grow as we start using more and more of those products.
Sam?
Basically, I think it's important that we realise that I made, we're going to see in a few minutes, some programs in the mid-80s on ecology and what was happening to the planet. And in '88 they were broadcast. Now, before they were broadcast and after they were broadcast, since 1988, there's been more greenhouse gases pumped into the atmosphere since I made that program than there was in the whole of human history before it. So in the last 30 years, we've put out more greenhouse gases into the atmosphere than the entire history of humanity. So it is, the catastrophe is here, ladies and gentlemen.
And John?
So there were two questions, wasn't there? One was about how did it start, and also how do we stop it? And absolutely, it kind of really started post-war when industrial production really started to ramp up, and factories really started to produce more and more things, and more people had central heating and that kind of thing, using up gas, which is a huge expensive fossil fuel. So how do we stop it? Well, really, it's to reverse the trend. And in fact, what we really need to go to is a much more simpler kind of lifestyle that we maybe had many years ago. And so we need to reduce the amount of energy we use. We need to travel a lot yet less in terms of international travel and using flights, because that has increased quite considerably as a major contributor to gases. And also we need to think very carefully about food and what we eat and where it comes from, because one of the major contributors also cattle. So beef production in particular is responsible for a huge amount of the methane gas that is produced and released to the atmosphere. So again, changing our diet could be something that we might want to consider, even by a small amount, eating less meat, for example, or dairy products.
Thank you, everyone. Now, as I mentioned, Sam has had a long, distinguished career in television. Over 30 years ago, he made a programme for the STV called The 19th Day. Let's have a look.
Scotland. To most people, the very word conjures up wide open spaces, mountains, fresh air, a landscape unsullied by overdevelopment and overcrowding. But in some respects, Scotland is a battleground. What goes on here reflects our accelerating conflict with the planet we inhabit. Take the Cairngorms. Now that most of Britain has been industrialised and urbanised, this place is one of the few remaining fragile refuges for a wealth of flora and fauna. But in trying to keep it the way it is, a conundrum is born. By man's self-imposed set of rules, the Cairngorms must stay wild and beautiful and also pay their way. But in paying their way, the beauty we value so much is put at risk. Just because we love our countryside doesn't ensure its protection. For the next 8 weeks, we'll be looking at various issues in this, Scotland's conservation conundrum. The fact we're faced with here in the Cairngorms is that, like everywhere else, the local community must make a living. Farmers in the foothills, victims of fluctuating market forces, are forced to squeeze more out of the land than it can really sustain. Jaded city dwellers turn to the Cairngorms for refuge from the pressures of urban life. So tourism and development are born. And where there's agriculture, where there's tourism, where there's development, where there's a democratic capitalist society at work, there's always a risk of upsetting the balance of nature. And in these days of unprecedented concern for the environment, the question is, have we tipped the balance too far?
So, Skye, as the youngest member of our panel, what's your reaction to that film that was filmed over 30 years ago?
I think it's really quite sad and tragic that these issues are still present. Like, that video is twice my age, and here I am sitting here saying nothing much has changed at all. Like, we're right back exactly where we were, with very few steps forward, and I think that's so tragic to be sat here saying a video that was made 30 years ago is still current and is still present.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it to Claire, I Okay, so we'll fling it over this side.
Yeah, so I guess for me it's kind of disappointment that nothing has been done, or not enough has been done anyway. So kind of disappointed predominantly at governments. I think a significant chunk of what can be done comes from them. There's a lot of kind of emphasis on behaviour change by individuals, but that is kind of needs to add up along with kind of businesses and governments really making significant change as well. So the fact that that's not happened is, yeah, quite disappointing, just as kind of a person and young person in Scotland, that we're still facing these issues.
Yeah. And John?
Yes, I thought it was very interesting. It's an area that I know well, the Cairngorms and Aviemore, and I go quite regularly, and now it's much more developed than it was. There are many more hotels, there's a lot of eco-tourism, adventure tourism out there. And so I think the point that was made was that city dwellers really appreciate escaping the city and embracing nature. And I think that's definitely more true today. But if they don't look after these areas and they don't think about sustainability, then we'll be spoiling that environment, and it's hugely valuable for Scotland and for its people.
And I guess Sam, like watching that back now, 30 years on, how does it make you feel?
Well, it makes me feel very, very old, because when I made it, I was already 4 times the age of Sky, and she's 4 times the age of the programme since. So I'm now 8 times older than Sky. No, I suppose it's an incredible and deep sadness. As I said previously, when I made that film, little did I know, or that series of films, little did I know that the amount of greenhouse gases would be accelerate beyond our wildest nightmares. And as I said, at the time we were putting a line in the sand, and as per usual, we were completely ignored.
So, I'd like to take this time to take a question from the audience. So we'll hand it over to the audience now.
How engaged do you think Edinburgh College students are in the climate agenda? And how do you think we can reach out to those who perhaps aren't engaged?
So I'm going to take this one to you, Claire. It's about student engagement and engaging students that maybe aren't engaged with climate things at the moment.
Yeah, of course. So we have been going into class time within our project at the Students' Association. So I definitely say there's been very varied levels of engagement and kind of knowledge. When we start the session, just kind of between different students, I guess, just based on courses they're studying, what else they're kind of interested in. But our session really is to try and help kind of engage them with that. So get that ball rolling on, even if they've never really heard much about climate change and sustainability, really letting them know what it is, kind of how that can really impact into their course as well. So not only telling them what climate change and sustainability are, but also how it relates to what they're wanting to do with their lives and their careers. So we're kind of hoping that that's a nice kind of tie-in to give them. And we then will be kind of circulating those resources as our project comes to an end to make sure that that can continue kind of being addressed and delivered during classes as we kind of go forward.
Sam, will we get you?
Yeah, I think what I would suggest is that you question everything as individuals, as students, as a student body. Question everything. We're in the age of misinformation. We're in the age of lies and mega lies. So question everything you hear from every single source. Question it if it comes from social media. Question it if it comes from newspapers, television, radio. Question it from me. If I don't believe anything I say unless you can prove it. So what I would say is as an organisation, as individuals within an organisation, please be aware of the temptations out there for other people to try and feed you misinformation. Check your sources, make sure they're reliable, and then act. Do something. Don't just respond. Don't discuss it ad nauseam, because you will be sick of discussing if you don't eventually do something. So check your sources, make sure you got the best information you can possibly get, then get out there and get active.
Yeah, do your own research and then act on that research. Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Yeah, John?
Yeah, well, I think in the college, for example, there's lots of ways people can get involved through what they're learning, or even at school. And I think in the college there's lots of projects that people get involved in. So, for example, textile students do lots of projects where they're upcycling clothes and creating new clothes from different fabrics and so on. There's lots of art installations, which again are part of learning, but they're also a really good visual way to engage people into conversation. I think it's really important that people engage each other in conversation about this to find out more about what is actually happening and what differences people personally can make. So again, and like Sam says, question exactly, how much impact does eating meat, for example, how much impact does that have on your own carbon footprint? How much impact are you personally making? And I think it's really important that the more you know about this, the more that you might want to make small changes in your own lifestyle. But there's lots happening within the college as part of the curriculum. And some of these things are extremely exciting and interesting. For example, in construction and built environment, lots of students are learning about green energy, solar PV panels, heat pumps, new technologies, and it's really exciting to be involved for them and how this new technology is being installed into people's houses. So, there's a bright future if people can think about how the jobs and the green jobs of the future are going to be positioned. So again, there is the scary bit about it, but there's also a way forward and there's a bright future there if we can embrace it.
And I know this is one that you've been chomping to get at, Sky, so students and engagement and engaging students in sustainability, what can we do?
Yeah, well, obviously, that is totally my sector. But I think the best way to do it is, one way I really do it is I constantly make my projects about climate change and climate crisis. So, let my teachers know that I'm conscious of this and I'm thinking of it. And, they will turn around to their staff and say, loads of my students are really interested in climate change and they might want to talk about it. It's about that kind of change. Also, talk to your friends. I think something about the climate crisis is it depends on people. United, we stand stronger, and talk to your friends. Say, hey, I'm going down to this awesome strike on Friday, hanging out with some awesome people. You should definitely come, and hopefully they'll come, and we can all be friends, and just spreading the word and making your projects of it, and just letting, I hate to say it, but grown-ups and older people know that you are thinking about it and that you're conscious of it, because once older people see that, they're like, okay, young people are really passionate about this. I need to get behind this. Just word of mouth. Tell your friends.
Now let's have a look at a short film by Iga, one of our broadcast media students in residence. The film is about Beltane Fire Society and their approach to sustainability.
Upcoming climate change conference brings us all together to inspire further actions to save our planet. Sustainability becomes an important topic within many communities across Edinburgh. Let's find out what one of them, Beltane Fire Society, is doing towards this case.
My name is Mary and I am leading a climate project for Beltane Fire Society. The project is based around having conversations about the climate crisis and bringing together people in the community to share their expertise and learn from each other. The climate problem is an emergency and we need to act urgently to make changes. It's all about just using your voice, just being brave, saying, I have got a little bit of experience with this thing here that I think might be useful, and so I'd like to share it with people. The board of the society are doing some kind of carbon accounting, and they are thinking about how to incorporate sustainability. And on more of an individual level, members have been coming forward saying things like, I think that we need to make our costumes more sustainable, or I think we need to be aware of how we treat the outdoors and so on. I think it really is important just to talk about it and to try to bring the climate into all of our conversations, because it is a huge problem. In terms of taking action rather than just talking, the most important things you can do at the moment, I think, are to fly less, drive less, and take up a vegan diet or eat less meat. But also you can do things like writing to your MP or writing to the government and trying to make your voice heard that way.
Hello, I'm Sarah, and this Samhain I'll be embodying the kayak, who is, for me, the anthropomorphic personification of winter and the goddess of the Scottish winter and the dark half of the year. I have been volunteering with my local Swift group in the spring, which is now sort of finished now the Swifts have all flown off home, but I enjoyed working on that project because from a sustainability perspective it was very holistic. So it was a lot of encouraging biodiversity on like a personal level, but also campaigning, engaging with projects for pesticide-free towns and for engaging with construction companies for planning permission to make sure that all new builds have Swift boxes installed. I know on at least an individual level, people are becoming more conscious of waste. I think we're lucky in that we're a fire festival, so we don't tend to go for plastic-heavy materials in the first place, but people are becoming more keen to give old costumes, old puppets a new lease of life. I think that's very encouraging from a sustainability perspective, but tying that back into the ritual aspects of a festival that engages so much with nature, the reuse of something echoes the way that resources in, say, the leaves on the trees that are falling right now are going to become soil to nourish the next year's trees. If you take care of the environment around you, it inspires everyone who grows up in that environment to take care of it as well.
So, sustainability. If we can cover sustainability in a nutshell, I think the person to do that would be Claire, I guess.
Yeah.
Will we take your... Yeah.
So, as I said, I studied sustainable development, which is essentially meeting the needs of the current generation without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs as well. So kind of key things to think about when we're thinking about sustainability are not only kind of environmental degradation and resources that we have, but also kind of social aspects as well. We really want to make sure that we are kind of addressing social impacts and having a good quality of life for everyone on the planet at the moment and also for those in the future as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of key points. We need to be thinking about economics when we're talking about sustainability as well, making sure that they're kind of reflecting going towards a more sustainable society. So yeah, I think that would be my kind of key points on here for really just making sure that we're driving towards all of those things, including the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'll let someone else talk a bit more about.
Yeah. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah. I think the thing about sustainability is people think it means they have to completely stop using plastic and they can't use their cars and they can't use trains and all of a sudden they can never go on holiday again because planes are the devil.
Yeah.
That's not the case at all. It's little changes, it's little things, it's little things that have a big impact. So it's like, be conscious, like bring your own bag to the shop, or maybe don't go to that one place because they fund a horrible thing, or instead of taking 5 holidays to foreign countries a year, maybe take one every 2 years. Consciously making little changes have a bigger impact than completely uprooting your life and completely changing everything. Like we're saying, we're trying to think about future generations here, and we can't just get rid of plastic. Some people need them for medical needs. We can't just completely get rid of cars. A lot of people rely on them to take food from countrysides into cities. So yeah, I think sustainability is just like little changes, and that's how we're going to reach those goals, and that's how we're going to get there.
Yeah. All for making small changes and promoting small changes. I do it with my daughter all the time. Little tiny things that we can change that can have a massive impact. It's all about that. John, your take on sustainability?
Yeah, well, the college itself has a big strategy around this about reduction, and we're committed to net zero by 2030, which is, again, ambitious, but it is in line with the City of Edinburgh, with whom we're aligned in terms of our plans and strategy. Over the last 7 years, we've reduced our carbon footprint by 57%, which I think is impressive. However, it's not going to get easier because to move it forward, we'll need a lot more investment in reducing and decarbonising our fuel supply. So we will need investment to bring in new technologies and so on. A lot of our lighting has been changed to LED, and that's made a massive difference. But again, I think we can influence our students more by encouraging more and more of you to join in our mission, because I worked out this morning that collectively we have about 25,000 students at Edinburgh College, which may be a surprise, but if the average carbon footprint of each individual is around 13 tonnes of CO2, then that would equate to around 1,625,000 double-decker buses of carbon that we collectively are creating. So you can see the impact of what we can do as a college. All our students are part of that college, and the students are the future. You are the future. So that is how we do it.
Speaking of the future, you had said that your grandchildren were your main emphasis behind sustainability and changing and working towards the environment. So what's your take on sustainability?
Well, I think it's a combination of what everyone said. Is basically if everybody in the room says gave up meat for 1 day a week, and then everybody in the UK followed your lead, that would mean about 8 million tonnes of carbon a week, or about 16 million cars equivalent off the road. So it's significant what the individual can do. But remember what I said before, always question. The big leaps forward are going to come from legislation. They're going to come from somebody making sure somebody else does not do the mega pollution. You, most of you in this room are over 16. You can vote. Do you know who your MSP is? Find out. Badger them. Ask questions of them. Make sure they're involved on your side of the change to make things better. Do not be a passenger in this bus that's travelling towards the sun at a very, very rapid rate of knots.
Yeah. So I think we'll take another question from the audience.
Okay, so I quite like food, and my question is, how does climate change affect my food?
So how is our food affected by climate change? John, would you like to start?
I think actually lockdown during the pandemic gave us a little glimpse into the future, something that certainly in my lifetime I've never seen before. We see empty shelves in supermarkets, and a lot of that was a disruption to the supply chain. And of course, we become very more aware of that we expect our food to be distributed from all parts of the world. And actually, climate change, as you mentioned at the start, is disproportionately affecting some of the poorer countries that we expect our food to be sent from. So we are likely to see more and more empty shelves and more disruption to crop production, even locally as well, that we saw this year, based on winters that are different from what we might have expected. So yeah, we'll see a lot of changes, I think.
Yeah. And Skye, yourself?
I think something that's said in the climate change movement a lot is out of sight, out of mind. A lot of people aren't conscious where their food comes from, and I think you made a really good point there, is it does come from these poorer countries that are getting so massively affected by it, and we just have this expectation that some magical person is going to make it just appear on our shelves and make it appear on our tables. That's not the case. I also like food, and I like being able to eat, you know, and it's one of these things where it's like, okay, one day we're going to realize that we're like, where's these things that we once enjoyed? And all of a sudden we're going to be like, oh, we could have changed that. Like, it could have been changed 30 years ago or 50 years ago. And we're sitting here and we're still going, oh, it's fine, out of sight, out of mind, it's fine. The food is still appearing on the table. It's still going to appear on the table. And one day it's just not, and we're going to be like, oh, we should have done something all those years ago. So yeah, we are going to see a massive drop, I reckon, in the next few years.
Yeah. And Sam?
Picking up from both previous speakers, I think one of the other things that we've got to do is to carry on that notion of the shelves being empty. As shelves empty, that indicates food is becoming scarcer. As any product becomes scarcer, the price gets higher. As the price gets higher, people get poorer. So the disproportionate gap between the poor and the rich in this country is going to get bigger. And you saw people causing great arguments about toilet rolls and empty supermarket shelves. Just imagine what will happen when it's tins of beans. You know, it could get very, very serious very, very quickly.
And Claire?
So I guess kind of something that I want to mention here is obviously that food systems really heavily just play into climate change as a general concept. So all the emissions from multiple different kind of sectors play into what food there's going to be. If there's kind of varying temperatures, we might have areas that can't grow food anymore. If there's areas being flooded because sea levels are rising and temperatures are kind of changing and fluctuating, it's going to impact where food can be grown as well. So I guess the point here is just the more we do for climate change as a whole, the more likely we're going to be able to kind of have these resources still going forward, and kind of to tie into some of the points that have kind of come up through those answers as well. If we're having like more seasonal and local food being grown and using that more, that will reduce our kind of impact on transport of a lot of food getting to us as well. So yeah, the food system plays into all of this really, really nice.
So I have a question for our college staff that we have on the panel today. So what other initiatives might be in the pipeline for the college around sustainability and around climate change? John?
Well, a few weeks ago, we launched our very first Sustainability Education Week, where we asked all staff who were participating in the initiative to start to encourage their students to start to build sustainability projects into the curriculum. And that's precipitated the creation of a film, a short film that showcases work that's going on across the college. And what we're hoping is that after COP26, what we'll do is we'll be able to relaunch that activity through the video, encourage more staff and students to participate in this kind of learning. And then next year, I think we would like to see another Sustainability Education Week becoming something that's a regular feature of the college.
Yeah.
So that's kind of from a curriculum point of view, that's what we're kind of trying to move towards, to raise awareness and give it a bit more focus. But from an operations point of view, there's some exciting developments in the Granton area. So our Granton campus is part of the waterfront development, and one of those is a big district heating scheme that's looking to be launched in that area as part of the new housing development. A sustainable community is what is envisaged there. And of course, the campus is right in the centre of that. And if things go as we hope they do, that whole campus could become part of a district heating scheme. So again, that would be very sustainable.
Yeah, exciting things to come. Yeah.
Obviously, the bigger things that the college can do as an organisation must come from several levels above my pay grade, like John's. But at the end of the day, I think there are individual things that we can do, and I think there's an opportunity here as students start to come back into college for face-to-face teaching. And I'll throw an idea off the top of my head is maybe we could encourage Gather and Gatherer to have meat-free Fridays. Maybe we could ask our suppliers, to say, well, okay, just one day a week, just offer vegetarian options, so that, and I'm sure those that are desperate for their meat fix will nip round to Greg's, but at least we would be making some sort of statement that there's things that we could do. And obviously, when you're in front of a class full of students, there will be natural opportunities arise just to make various points. And as staff, if we're educated, we can, in the ways of sustainability, then we can make those points as they come up.
Yeah. I guess speaking of class time, this is something that you're very into.
Yeah, definitely. So we've been delivering classes through the Go Green project that we're working on in the Students' Association, so I touched a bit on that earlier. So that is some way that the students can kind of get a bit more information, start to be a bit more informed of these issues. Also, we have lots of kind of other things in the Go Green project as well. So we're currently actually getting Go Green Hub set up on all of our campuses. So that's going to have swap shops and community fridges that students can take advantage of. So community fridges, in a nutshell, are we will get food from local businesses that would go to waste but can still be used. Goes into the fridge, students can come and take whatever they want from there, and it's then kind of to do with weight of food that's not going to waste anymore. We'll also have the swap shops will be things like clothes, accessories, books that students can donate what they don't want anymore that other students can then take out. And that just means that we're using kind of having more circular economy. We're using things more rather than putting them to waste. So that is kind of direct things that students can kind of come along and see on campuses. So it's by our office in Sight Hill. The ex-office is just up in the atrium first floor, or it will be kind of near reception on all other 3 campuses. So hopefully it should be nice and easy for everyone to see really soon. And we also do kind of have travel kind of helpful things as well. So safety gear for bikes, lights, high-vis, all those kind of things. So if students want to get more involved with travelling more sustainably, we can help them with that as well.
So lots of exciting things on the college's end. So we're just about out of time, so thank you for joining us. Before we go, I'd like to ask our panel, what do you hope will come from COP26? So taking it right back to the start. So, John.
Yeah, I really hope that we can get that commitment to the restriction of the global warming, to 1.5 degrees C. That would be absolutely incredible if that commitment can happen. We've already had a bit of down talking the last week from leaders saying, well, we might not get that agreement. I think that's appalling that they've actually started down talking that outcome before we've even had the conference. So people really need to focus on that and agree to it and keep working towards that particular one. But there are 4 things there as well.
Yeah. And Sam, what do you hope will come?
What I really hope comes out of COP26 is realism. I'm too old to be enthusiastic about the bunch of chancers we see at COP26. I'm allowed to say that at my age. All I hope for is realism, is that they actually realise we don't have a second run at this. We're so close to the edge. The 19th day. The 19th day is upon us. Tomorrow's the 20th day when oblivion beckons.
And Claire, what do you hope will come from this?
I'm kind of hoping, so I kind of agree with Sam that, we need to be realistic on what can be achieved, but I really hope that that's ambitious and actually will be reflected more in government and kind of business expectations. So whether it's putting kind of taxes on things that are unsustainable, incentivising things that are more sustainable for businesses to be doing, just really kind of supporting this move over, and I guess as well just comes into something that I think Skye might want to touch on a bit more, not having any more fossil fuel kind of organisations continuing to drill. So I'll actually think that might be a good point to pass over to Skye to talk about Stock Campbell.
Yeah, of course. I think, again, just this realism, and I really wish that the government would have the passion that I see so many young people have kind of daily. I work for an organisation called Fridays for Future Scotland, and it is filled with passionate, intelligent young people who I am constantly in awe of, and I'm honoured to be able to call them my friends. I just wish the government would have the same passion and the same drive that they have and that I see them have on the daily. And I just hope that they start being realistic with themselves instead of telling themselves that they can do it tomorrow or out of sight, out of mind. So they actually look at the situation and have the passion and look at these indigenous cultures that are being affected. And as a human being, even regardless if you're in a position of power or if you're a scientist, as a human being, how can you look at those cultures and go, I'm okay with that. I'm okay seeing them be rehomed, and I'm okay with seeing children be separated from their parents because flash flooding and all these crises. Just look at it, be realistic with yourself, and actually make the necessary change that's needed desperately.
I take the point, but I come back to my point and make it again forcibly. Make reasonableness. In the weeks before COP, we reduced the tax on flying in the UK. In the weeks before COP, we encouraged the further development of offshore oil and gas around about our shores. We cannot talk about hope when that is going on in the weeks before COP26. I made the 19th day 8 years before COP1.
Yeah.
Okay? Here we are at COP26. What has changed? Nothing except an exponential growth in the problem. So I'm not hoping for anything from COP26 except realism.
I'd like to thank our panel, Skye, John, Claire and Sam, and of course our audience, and of course you for watching. You can find out more on these issues by contacting EXA or by looking at the Edinburgh College website. That's all from us. Goodbye.